speaking to you all. I'm very honored to be on this stage, and I'm really looking forward to also hearing your questions afterwards. Just to give you a heads up, I will really love to be talking with you and doing my job as a mentor, even though you might look at me and think, you know, she's a student, she doesn't even look like a university student, because I'm not. I'm actually 13 years old, and I should tell all my friends that it's really awesome to turn 13. You get applause just for being 13. No, actually, I'm here for a number of reasons, but I won't go into those too much because you'll hear more during the speech. Now, I want to give a disclaimer firstly, because this, at the beginning I have this sort of joke, which might be a little bit offensive, not like super bad way, but it's just that I want you to imagine for a second that the 13-year-old standing in front of you, so as you can see from the grainy picture, I'm 13, is actually 55 years old for the period of the next few seconds. And again, this is a really bad picture of, I went to a website where you're supposed to be able to see what you look like in 20 years, but it just makes me look ugly, so. Now, okay, so what I'm about to say is not representative of not all 55-year-olds, not all adults think that of you. In fact, probably none of the adults here at this conference think that of you. Especially, you know, if you look at the incredible mentors here and the incredible organizers, the reason this conference exists is because of the strong belief in the potential of young people. But many of you have probably experienced at some point over your lives an adult talent is naive, untested. Well, Obama was naive enough to win. And in my case, at the age of 7, before Obama's name even showed up on the radar, this is a picture of me at 7, I was naive enough to want to publish a book. To many, that most adult of tasks, book publishing, is just too mature for kids. Just look at the numbers. If you look at a major publisher, how many books have they published this year? How many books were written by someone under the age of 18, or someone even under the age of 20? Publishing a book is definitely a hard business. You'll get rejected by endless publishers, and if it does get accepted, it's very possible that it might not make any money, and no one may read it, and it might be really unpopular. So you might think this would be really traumatizing for children. They don't really have the armor needed to go to battle against these obstacles. Well, my opinion is that maybe that's because we don't have those obstacles. Well, no, of course we have those obstacles. We have those obstacles in more. Literary agents who say they won't work with children. Publishers, children's publishers who will say they don't work with children, even though that alienates a kind of large audience. So why, you might ask, would any reasonable 7-year-old tell their mom and dad, I want to get published? Well, maybe 7-year-old Adora didn't see the obstacles that 13-year-old Adora does. My logic told me that if there were so many published authors out there and an awful lot of bad ones, then it couldn't be so hard to get published. So out went the manuscripts, letters, and phone calls. And I think that from my 2 books, Flying Fingers and Dancing Fingers, you know the ending to that story. But I wasn't done with dreaming yet. As my older sister Adriana will no doubt complain to you, I have a rather aggressive way of foisting my likes and dislikes upon others, as in, Adriana, you shouldn't like Lady Gaga's music because I don't like it for reasons A, B, and C. Or maybe insisting that my family go see medieval castles in the south of France during family vacations. But this behavior has had positive implications. When I was growing up, I loved reading and writing so much that I assumed that everyone else in the world just had to love reading and writing. It never really entered my mind that it was physically possible not to like reading and writing until I met one of those people who said, nah, I don't like reading, in a nonchalant tone. So my behavior of trying to get other people to model what I did and thought kicked in, and I decided I would simply go around to schools and make other kids like reading and writing. And of course, I was naive enough to think that I could do that. I didn't start by running surveys and reading journal articles, looking at socioeconomic data about children who don't like to read, as countless experts have probably done. Instead, I just went around to schools with stuffed animals to ask preschoolers, hey, what's the character we should make this? What's the newest plot twist? And I would spin stories with audiences of children who might even sometimes be taller than I was. I'm standing on a box right now just so that you can see me above this podium. Naivete and impulsiveness start to look like pretty good words. But what do you think when you hear the phrase, acting on impulse? Maybe you think of doing something without thinking about it first. Negative things, scandals, shaky financial markets, unwise decisions. But sometimes impulse can be a driving force for social change. I want to tell you a story about a 5-year-old. That's actually true. 5-year-old Phoebe Russell of San Francisco, California, was on a drive with her parents when she saw homeless people sitting by the side of the street, and she asked her parents, why do they look so sad? And her parents told her that they were hungry, and then pointed out a local food bank and said, that's where they might get their food, that the food bank helps people who are hungry. So of course, Phoebe naturally decides to go collect cans from friends, neighbors, strangers to get can refunds, and she uses that money to raise enough money to feed 18,000 meals to hungry people at the San Francisco Food Bank. So you see how acting on impulse can sometimes have positive implications. Wouldn't you like to have those kinds of impulses? Imagine how many problems we could solve and how much better the world could become. Another example comes from Felix Finkbeiner, and in 2007, the then 9-year-old student founded Plant for the Planet, which is a student initiative to green the earth by planting trees. And so far, kids from over 70 countries have already planted 3 million trees. In September of 2009, he spoke at the UN General Assembly in New York to launch a campaign. It was titled Stop Talking, Start Planting, and it featured all these adults with their mouths covered by rather cheerful-looking kids. On the same environmental note, someone I know, Alec Lors, I actually had him speak at a conference I organized, TEDx Redmond. He's doing something called the I Matter March, and it's on Mother's Day, and he's getting kids around the world in multiple cities to march to their governments, to adults, and say, we need to really fix this environmental thing, take action. And so he spoke about that initiative. And what really strikes me about these examples of Alec, about Felix, of Phoebe, is that they're really getting in there and trying to solve these problems. And I think that a fundamental difference between sometimes what we see from adults, again, not all, just occasionally, and many, again, not all young people, is our approach to solving problems. So let's say you see littering on the beach. So people are just throwing bottles and cans and whatever on the beach, and it's making it really ugly, and it's not a pretty sight at all. Do you, choice A, make a Facebook event, clean up the beach, inviting your friends and their friends to join your volunteer team to go there and clean it up, post signs, and send out informal patrols to stop people from littering? Or B, do you realize litter is an issue, get approval from several people to set up a committee to discuss the problem several months from now, contact and bring in several experts and brainstorm possible approaches that you may or may not act on while the volunteers with choice A are already at work? I think that it's clear that you would want to do something that would give you results. You want to act. You want to make a plan and actually act on it. From Phoebe, Alex, and Felix's stories, we can learn about the value of seeing a problem and taking direct action, doing something to solve it. To quote the Education Without Borders conference on what they're trying to do, the objective of EWB is to create networks across cultures in order to understand and generate solutions for some of the world's greatest challenges. This is achieved by engaging the world's most innovative students and leaders in the business, technology, education, and humanitarian sectors in a collaborative forum that culminates in a commitment to action. This is what we're trying to do, is take action on problems. We're not just going to say, oh, well, maybe we're going to do this, or maybe that, go home, not do anything. That is not what success looks like. And I believe I'm paraphrasing here, but Sheikh Nahyan said something along the lines of that the success of this conference won't be measured by what is said, but what is done. What you go home to do, bring it to your universities and colleges, and decide, what am I going to do to solve problems? How will I use what I've learned here? So ask yourself, what are problems that you see in your schools, in your communities, in your world? The question is, are you naive enough or impulsive enough to solve them? One effective method that many have utilized is social networking. I will skip the how many of you are on Facebook question since we've already seen that. Woohoo, we're cut out for me. But we've seen Facebook and Twitter and all these social networks effects and movements around the world. And although all this shallow communication that you see that we have today, LOL and OMG, might make you think, I don't know if social networking can really be utilized that well to do good, then I would argue that there are many people who use the internet to post meaningful work and help others, and that far outweighs the number of people who are just basically chatting with their friends for fun. So I want to tell you a story about someone I know, and this is a relatively small thing. It's not a giant project, but My mom ran an after-school program for many years, and this person, who I'm not naming in case of legal action brought against me, was one of the students. So you'll see the legal action part, because to say that we didn't get along would be a dramatic understatement. There was an exchange of negative feeling on both sides. I also recall there was a punching incident at one time, yes, literally. And I wrote some pretty nasty things in my journal about all the horrific punishments that I wished upon them, which I now regret. And by nasty, I mean presidential aspiration ending. These are my skeletons in the closet. Okay, not quite. But long story short, I haven't seen this person for about 3 years or so, because he moved last year with his family. And I opened up my Facebook inbox because I see a new message, and it says orphanage fundraiser at the top. As it turned out, this kid who I looked to as the epitome of misbehavior, this was the example I was going to cite to my future kids and grandkids and great-grandkids, as this is the person you do not want to emulate. This kid was doing a triathlon to raise money for a Thai orphanage so that they could have a clean water source. So I was looking at this and thinking, wow, I really made a mistake on all the stuff I wrote on my journal. But he was using Facebook to spread the word about this event he was doing, solicit donations, and publish a list of the names of people who had donated. And I looked at this, and even though it was a relatively small thing, it was one kid's project, I saw how Facebook became such an important tool for reaching out and getting donations. And another story similar is that my older sister, Adriana, sent out her birthday invites via Facebook, but she also sent out another thing. She sent a message to her friends asking, in addition to or in place of a present, for a donation for the world's youngest headmaster, Indian student and teacher Babar Ali, and his school, which serves children in his hometown too poor to attend school. And one of her friends said that his sister had cried when she read the story, because that was how beautiful and incredible it was. And these are just close to home examples of people that I know, using Facebook on a small scale to solicit donations for good projects, and using some of the most basic functions. But there are people, including those being honored here at this conference, who are doing the same on a larger scale. One of the Rolex Young Laureates, Jacob Kolker, used the power of technology to help identify missing persons in the wake of the Haitian earthquake, and his system allows nonprofits to post questions and problems and have them answered by micro-volunteers online. And the website also matches people with valuable expertise with the people who need it most, like a village leader looking to build a well with someone who has the information and knows how to do it. Now I want to apologize for mangling, butchering this name, Nemeka Ikegwonu. I'm really sorry about my terrible pronunciation, but the Rolex Young Laureate is using a slightly more old school but equally effective method to reach out to rural farmers in Nigeria. So those of you who have gone online to see who the Rolex Young Laureates are, then you'll know that he is using radio to reach out, and he has, according to the website, already established a communications network reaching 3.5 million farmers. Not only will farmers receive advice on a wide range of topics, from sustainable farming practices to HIV/AIDS and opening and running a bank account, they will be able to contribute information thanks to interactive mobile radios known as air devices, and these small solar-powered machines will allow listeners to send voice messages free of charge to radio stations, which can in turn broadcast them. So these farmers now have a platform, a social network over radio, if you will, where they can share their experiences, ask questions, and receive answers in their own language. So from using social networking to setting up a social network over radio, you see how technology has allowed education to take place on many different fronts. And I want to echo also what Tony Blair said during the World Forum, which some of you may have attended, which was, again, paraphrasing, that you find teachers, not just in traditional teachers in your classroom, but also in mentors, in friends, in neighbors, in people who you meet everywhere. And so we can find our teachers from people younger or older, the same age. And so looking at social networking and interaction, you can look at this as a way to learn and gain education. Now you might think that from all this talk about social networking and technology and interaction, it would be easy to imagine that young people doing good and taking responsibility for the world is a relatively new trend. Well, it's not, because children, teens, and 20-somethings have pushed limits since ancient times. Most of you have heard of the legendary Emperor Alexander the Great, whatever your... Oops, I skipped over the pictures of the Rolex Young Laureates, it seems. Oops, that was not Alexander the Great. This is a mosaic of Alexander the Great. Whatever your opinions about Alexander the Great are, I have to say it's pretty interesting and cool that at the tender age of 16, he had so gained his father's trust that one time Philip II left Alexander in charge of the country and asked me, what have you been up to? Watching your parents' house? You thought that was responsibility. Watching a country is definitely very impressive. So his temporary regent, Alexander the Great, also not only did government things, but he also successfully repressed a rebellion. Another Alexander, this one from the United States, also started early. Alexander Hamilton was a key government figure in the Revolutionary War when we became independent from Britain. And so he became a key government figure. And he began working as a clerk in a merchant's office at 11 years old. By age 14, he was publishing poems and articles in the local newspaper. At age 18, he wrote his first political pamphlet. And at age 19, he talked the mob out of attacking the president at King's College. By age 22, he was a lieutenant colonel and an aide-de-camp to George Washington, the United States first president, and he went on to write the Federalist Papers and to forge American financial policy during his tenure as Secretary of the Treasury. If you guys are ever visiting the United States, you'll see Alexander Hamilton on some of the money. So you can see how these two Alexanders were using their wisdom from a very young age, not waiting because they thought, I can't get involved, I can't do things, I have to wait till I'm 30 or 40. And though I can't claim to have ruled any kingdoms or written that many political pamphlets, at least I can still hold on to the youngest teacher title. I teach classes and students by video conferencing very frequently. But Englishwoman Elizabeth Fry, who I believe is on English Money as well. You'd have to ask some people who have lived in England. But she was 19 when she began visiting a workhouse to teach poor children, and this picture is older, of course. But at age 23, then she began her life work of prison reform. She founded the Association for the Improvement of the Female Prisoners in Newgate, which organized a school for prisoners, and later testified before the House of Commons on prison conditions, and started libraries for the Coast Guard and family centers for the poor. So you see how young people taking action and doing things obviously isn't a new trend. Yet despite all these things which we can evidently learn from young people, over time we've heard endless thinkers, authorities, and experts say, wait until you're older, emphasizing the superiority of adults and that we need to wait to grow up to do things. And it's only when we get to be middle age, it seems, that we'll be fairly respectable. Just think back to your schooling experience. How old were most of your teachers? Did you ever have a teacher who is younger than you were, or maybe the same age? What about presidents and prime ministers? Barack Obama in his late 40s was considered a young candidate in your late 40s, but as a 40-something fast food worker would be an anomaly. Why should inexperience immediately translate to a less rewarding job? Experience and age, or lack of it, shouldn't count against us. We have as much to teach our parents and professors as they have to teach us. Just think, as one example. Have your parents, or maybe an older relative, have they ever asked you for help with a smartphone, or with a computer, or with something to do with technology before? I think there's a pretty obvious reason why Google started a website around last year's holiday season called Teach Parents Tech. I know from experience how much adults can learn from kids in this area. I saw on Quora that one teacher, Kathy Laguna, said, some students want to use picnic.com instead of Microsoft Paint, and I asked them to teach me how to use it too. They love to teach the teacher. And that's something which, again, echoes this non-traditional teaching. We don't find our teachers only in traditional teachers in our classrooms. We find them from people older, younger, and younger than us. I don't just base my ideas about young people teaching their teachers, teaching their parents on quotes or stories. I look at my own personal experience. This is my dad, John Svitak. Terrible picture, sorry, it was from a vacation in Mexico. We were kind of squinting. And he's in the audience today. So my dad was interested in Facebook for a very long time, but he only got the chance to set up a Facebook account last October. And what's so nice about my dad being on Facebook is that it's given me the chance to teach him something when it's usually me asking the questions. So it's to deal with ionic and covalent bonds again. How do I solve this inequality? Yeah, I know I'm kind of basic on the math and science level. So it's an empowering feeling to, for once, have it the other way around. My dad is a quick learner when it comes to Facebook and blogging, setting up a website, and tweeting as well. We've even got him hooked on the addictive cell phone game app Angry Birds. The funny thing is, with the possible exception of Angry Birds, my dad using technology increasingly might actually equal more in-person conversation because we're talking, asking questions, and explaining things. At the TED conference in California, I spoke about what adults could learn from young people, and technology definitely provides a way for you to not only learn, but also to teach. Through our various forms of tech support when we're teaching our elder relatives, and though this provides a really obvious and everyday way in which adults often learn from young people, I want to emphasize it doesn't stop there. You have more to teach than how to work PowerPoint or how to set up a website, because this is only a tangible part. What's even more powerful may be the intangible things that we have to teach our elders. Maybe our optimism, our audacity to dream, our determination to accomplish. I've heard countless teachers tell me how much they've learned from their students, and parents say how much they've learned from their kids. There was an actor at the Oscars, the awards ceremony for movies, who said, he was thanking his daughter at the end and said that she had taught him more than he could ever teach her. So next time someone calls you naive with a frown on their face and a sort of look, smile and say thank you. Because maybe in that one word you have something to teach them. What is it exactly that you can teach your elders? Maybe it's that enviable startup attitude, the I'm already broke so it can't hurt to start a company outlook. Maybe it's the ease with which you weave social networking into doing social good. Maybe it's the inexperienced, impulsive, and naive can be good words. So let's take action, not only to redefine ourselves, but also the world that we live in. Thank you.
Unfortunately, we don't have time for questions that are hanging around. Go and find her.
Can we bring her back?
Now, His Excellency is in the building, so can I please ask everyone to remain seated and also pull out your cell phones and turn them off if possible.
If only the adults at our conference would have the same mentality about solving our problems as someone younger than me and is pushing me to strive to do more than I'm doing.
And where are you from?
I'm from Oklahoma, USA.
Great. And what's your name?
Austin Slaymaker.
Thank you very much.